A billionaire came home 3 days early, but what he saw inside his mansion shocked him beyond belief. In his luxury kitchen stood his maid, not alone but with 2 orphaned babies strapped to her chest. His rage clashed with her desperate truth, and in that moment everything changed forever. What really happened that day? And how did these 2 children shake his entire empire? Watch this unbelievable story now, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Daniel Carter expected silence when the elevator opened into his penthouse, but the first thing he heard was a sound that didn't belong in a place like this. Soft, breathy babbles, the hiccupy noises of babies learning to claim air and attention. He closed the steel-grey door behind him and stilled, suitcase handle clenched in one hand, the other smoothing a tie he'd worn to 20 hours of back-to-back meetings that felt like wars fought with catered pastries and weaponized smiles. He had come home 3 days early to escape all of that. Silence was supposed to be his reward. From the kitchen, a whisper of lullaby sung under breath. Spanish, the faint rattle of a cabinet. Daniel's jaw hardened. He paid enough to ensure that children never ran through these rooms. No messes, no surprises, no needs he hadn't approved. He crossed the living room, past floor-to-ceiling glass, and a view of the East River turned silver by afternoon haze, and the marble began to thud under his Italian shoes. He didn't raise his voice, not yet. Control was the richest currency he owned. Then he stepped into the kitchen and lost a little of it. Elena stood at the island, blue housekeeping tunic, yellow gloves, hair tucked into a neat bun. Strapped to her chest in a soft slate-grey sling were 2 babies, pale-haired, moon-faced, blinking at the light like small owls. One sucked on a fist. The other watched him as if memorizing his outline. "What is this?" Daniel said, not as a question. It came out like a verdict awaiting terms. Elena flinched, but only for a second. She turned, kept one hand on a spray bottle, the other palming a burp cloth at a tiny chin. "Sir, you weren't supposed to be back yet. That's your first thought." He laid the suitcase down with a controlled thump. Not an explanation. Not an apology. Her eyes held. "They are my sister's children." He could feel the irritation arranging itself into rage piece by piece. Like a chessboard, plenty of men had learned to fear across conference tables. "So they are yours now? Since when do I pay you to convert my kitchen into a nursery?" "They are not usually here," she said quickly. "Only so for the past 3 days," he finished, because he could count. Bottles lined up to dry by the sink, a blanket folded on a chair, a bottle warmer plugged into an outlet that Lydia, his house manager, guarded like a dragon. 3 days of a god he did not worship. Chaos. Living rent-free in his immaculate home. Daniel moved closer, shadow lengthening across the island. The babies stiffened at the shift in air. Elena rocked them automatically, and her voice softened to a murmur. "Tranquilo, cariño. I know. You broke the rules," he said. "You broke trust." Yes, her chin lifted. "I didn't break my promise to my sister." There was a ding in his pocket. He pulled out the phone. 2 security notifications stacked like bad omens. Cam 06 kitchen offline, manual pause 72 HRs, motion detected 142219. He flicked to his home app. Camera 06 showed a grey slate with a line of text. Paused via authorized staff code. Lydia would never. Which meant someone else had a code. He tapped Gabe Nolan, head of protective services. The call rang once. "Boss?" Gabe answered, voice gravel and wire. "Kitchen cam's been down 3 days. Who authorized it?" A beat, keys clacked. Says, "Temporary privacy allowance, caregiver access." That's a new flag. Pushed from house manager console. Lydia didn't do that. Console shows her login, but the timestamps when she was with you in Chicago. So someone spoofed Lydia, or Lydia had a ghost in the machine. Daniel's eyes cut back to Elena. "Where is Lydia?" he asked. Elena swallowed. "At her mother's in Yonkers." "Her mother had a procedure. She asked me to cover the plants and mail. She called you. Did you not?" "My phone's been off airplanes and on fire," he said. "We are done discussing Lydia. We are discussing why you brought infants into my home." Elena's face didn't crumble. It said, "Because their mother is dead. Their father is gone. And my mother, who kept them since the funeral, fell last week. She is 71. Her hip is not. She cannot lift 2 babies. There was no one else. Neighbors exist," he said, cold as the stainless steel behind her. "Shelters exist. Daycare exists. Her laugh was short without humor. "You're a smart man, Mr. Carter. You know what happens to babies who have no papers and no advocates. They disappear into a system that forgets names and remembers numbers." My mother begged me. "No shelters, Eleanor. Keep them close until we find a way." "This is my keeping them close." Daniel's hand landed flat on the counter. Not a slam. A punctuation. One baby startled anyway, a small cry, and his throat acted on instinct he didn't know he had. He lowered his voice. "Do not turn this on me. You are in my house, on my money, and you hid them." "I didn't lie," Elena said. "I hid them. That is a kind of betrayal." "I accept it." She took a breath. "But I will not abandon them." The words hit something armored in him and found a seam. He looked away first. There was a hospital bracelet looped around one baby's ankle, half covered by the sling. In tiny black letters he read, "Martinez Luna." Beneath it a smaller line, "Grant Amora Foundation NICU, Amora." The syllable struck like a match in a dark room. Not because it was the name of his philanthropic arm, Amora was everywhere on gala programs and tax filings, but because it was his mother's maiden name, the only thing she gave him besides a spine, hard enough to survive the foster system when she disappeared. Amora was the reason he wrote checks to NICUs in cities he never visited, why he told accountants, "Do it in her name," and never went to those ribbon cuttings. He looked at Elena. "Where did they get that bracelet?" "Queen's General. They were born early, not much. Just enough to need help." Her mouth twitched. "Your help, apparently." He didn't like coincidences. They felt like events that cheated. "Who put them in the NICU, Grant?" "My sister did not have insurance. Someone at the hospital said there was a fund. They didn't say it was yours. I only saw the paper in the bag last week." Daniel scanned the diaper bag on a chair. Neat, cheap, clean. He opened it, not asking permission. Diapers, wipes, 2 small knitted caps. A Ziploc with neatly folded documents. He drew out a pink carbon copy labeled Amora NICU Grant, Post-Discharge Follow-Up. A note clipped to it in careful block letters. Contact, R. Martinez. Beside the name, a number with 3 digits missing, torn off by a crooked rip. The next sheet was worse. A photocopy of a city incident report. Warehouse accident, Carter Logistics, Pier 17, date 5 weeks ago. Employee Rosa Martinez. Status fatality pending tox. He felt heat crawl up his neck. And for the first time since stepping off the elevator, the boardroom came back to him. Victor Hale leaning across glass, voice so low it could cut. "We settled the pier thing, buttoned. Don't pick at scabs." Daniel had been too busy fighting an acquisition to ask what pier thing meant. He was asking now. "Your sister worked at Pier 17? He said. Elena's eyes flicked to the paper in his hand and then slowly came back up. "Yes, and she died there." That is what they wrote. The last word carried more weight than a dictionary allowed. "What do you think happened?" Elena's mouth flattened. "I think when poor women die at rich men's companies, the papers say what keeps the machine oiled." He should have been insulted. He found himself not even annoyed, only aware suddenly of how many things he'd outsourced to men who told him the numbers and spared him the stories. The babies breathed against Elena's chest. One tiny hand escaped the sling and reached, groping at air until the fingers snagged Daniel's tie, soft as a moth landing. He didn't move. The tie tugged once, gentle. The baby blinked up at him as if surprised by his height. His phone chimed on the counter again. A text from Gabe's, a pulled door logs. Someone used a back-of-house staff fob that shouldn't exist. "Looks cloned. Also heads up. CPS just pinged your address for a welfare check." "Caller anonymous," he raised his eyes. "Did you call Child Protective Services?" Eleanor shook her head so fast, a flyaway strand freed itself from the bun. "No. Did your mother? She would never." "Who else knows they're here?" "Lydia," she said. "And the doorman saw me bring them up with groceries." He wouldn't say anything. "He likes me. But people talk. People are always a problem," Daniel said, and realized as he said it that Elena's mouth twitched again. Almost a smile if smiles could be bitter. In the quiet, the twins made their small nebula sounds. Eleanor rocked on the balls of her feet and kept talking like a woman who knew momentum could be the difference between collapse and standing. "My sister named them Luna and Mateo," she said. "Luna means moon. She used to say the moon keeps secrets for women. Mateo means gift." She said he was the proof that even bad nights can leave something good. You're telling me this because you think in transactions, Elena said, not unkindly. You want to know what is in your house before you decide what it costs you. He could have denied it. He didn't. The honesty of it scrubbed something out of him that had been calcifying since he was a boy, sleeping under a foster home's table to avoid a drunk man's boots. He reached for the Amora form again, read the follow-up address, the Amora Foundation Midtown office. His office. He'd never once been inside. His name was on the wall. The rest had been delegated. He put the paper down and exhaled. They do not come here again without my say, he said. The words surprised them both by sounding less like punishment than order-arranging chaos. But I'll make sure your mother gets help, real help. Physical therapy, home care, groceries delivered. And as for Pier 17, I want everything, reports, names, phone calls. If someone lied to make a number prettier, they will not enjoy the next quarter. Elena's eyes shone, but she didn't let them fall. Why would you do that? He could have said, because you showed me a bracelet with my mother's name. Because one of them grabbed my tie like I was more than a set of polished shoes. Because I am tired of signing checks that fix nothing I can see. He said, because you kept a promise the world would have forgiven you for breaking. She closed her eyes for a beat, then nodded once, as if sealing an agreement the law had no language for. A soft chime threaded the room. The private elevator. It required a key fob and a resident code. Daniel and Lydia had them. A handful of vetted vendors had one-time tokens that pinged Gabe's team well before they got anywhere near the penthouse. On the wall panel, a slim LED flicked from blue to white to red, the color it used when a fob wasn't recognized, but the car still rose. Daniel's spine went cold. He picked up his phone. Gabe, someone's on my private lift. I see it. Not one of ours. We're locking down the floor. The elevator whirred to a stop. The internal door didn't open. Whoever was inside had pressed the hall button and then used a manual override to stall. A thin, deliberate pause. Then the lock cycled and the door slid back. 2 people stepped out. A man and a woman, plain clothes, lanyards with laminated badges that read, City Child Protective Services. The man's jacket sat wrong on his shoulders, like he wasn't used to the weight of it. The woman's badge had yesterday's date printed where there should have been an expiration. Mr. Carter, the man said, voice polite, smile too quick. We received a report of children in distress at this residence. Elena's fingers tightened on the sling until her knuckles went white. The babies felt it and fussed. Small protests like match heads. Daniel didn't look away from the badges. The city seal at the corner was off by 2 stars. He knew because his lawyers donated to the people who designed the real ones. Of course you did, he said, voice turning to glass. He took one unhurried step forward, enough to put himself between Elena and the newcomers. Then I'm sure you won't mind if I call the commissioner to confirm your visit. The man's smile didn't move. The woman's eyes flicked past him toward the sling. Not at Elena, at Luna and Mateo, as if the babies were a target she'd been given a photograph of. Daniel lifted his phone. On the screen, Gabe's text arrived, 3 words that scraped the back of his neck. Not CPS, armed. The text from Gabe, not CPS, armed, hit Daniel like a cold blade against the spine. He didn't let it show. He slid his phone face down on the island, voice civil, posture loose, the way he spoke to hostile investors right before he took their companies out from under them. Of course, he said, as if he were relieved to see them. You'll understand if I verify your credentials. The man tilted his head, smile glued on. We don't need to wait. Emergency removal. We'll be quick. Then you won't mind 2 minutes, Daniel replied, stepping just enough to block their line of sight to Elena and the twins. Maya still commissioner? He asked as if recalling a brunch. Or did she step down? Commissioner Patel, the woman said automatically. Her eyes never left the sling. Close, Daniel thought. The city hadn't had a Commissioner Patel in 3 years. He tapped his watch with his thumb, 3 firm presses. Somewhere inside the wall, relays clicked. The penthouse shifted into a mode only 5 people knew existed. Locks hardened. Cameras that were never supposed to be off came back to life from independent power, and the service corridor sealed behind a steel tongue. Elena, he said without turning, voice easy like a man asking for salt. Pantry. She understood more quickly than he expected. Maybe she'd worked in houses with too many secrets. Maybe she read the false badges in a breath. She drifted sideways as if reaching for paper towels. The swing door to the pantry cracked. Behind the racks of imported olive oil and artisan flour was a panel with no handle. She put her shoulder against the flour shelf. It rolled, revealing a narrow hall and the hint of a room. She slipped through with the twins, shut the shelf behind her, and the kitchen returned to marble and chrome and a billionaire and 2 caseworkers. The man's eyes flickered. He hadn't missed the movement. He just didn't understand it. "Sir, we're going to need to see the children." "You'll need a court order for that," Daniel said. "Signed and dated, with a docket number that survives a phone call." The woman took a step forward. Her hand hovered near the edge of her jacket. Daniel tracked it with a kind of detached clarity. Rage was useless here. Precision wasn't Gabe, he said aloud, knowing the ceiling mic would pick it up and pipe it to the security sub-console. If this were a drill, I'd ask how long until building response. Gabe's voice came in his ear through the tiniest bud that had slid into his canal when he touched his watch. "Less than a minute. 2 men on your door in 40 seconds. NYPD notified as suspected impersonation. I've got eyes on the elevator. 2 in the car, 1 in the service stairwell. Your guests didn't come alone, so 3. The third was angling to flank." Daniel adjusted, casual as a cat turning on a windowsill, and placed his hip against the kitchen door. "If the third tried to come through the back, he'd eat steel, sir," the man said, smile sharpened. "You're obstructing an emergency order." "You're obstructing a felony arrest," Daniel countered, smile absent. He took his phone, hit a contact, put it on speaker. A woman's voice answered on the first ring, clipped and dry. "Commissioner Maya Chen." "Apologies for the interruption," Daniel said, eyes on the badges. "I have 2 CPS agents in my kitchen who are very eager. I'd like to confirm their IDs before they remove any children from my home." Silence. Then steel wrapped in silk. "You're not on my calendar for a home visit, Mr. Carter. Put one of them on." The man recovered quickly. "Commissioner James Holt, Child Protective Services." "Badge number," she snapped. He rattled one off. Daniel watched the woman's hand. Still near the jacket hem, he shifted his weight a degree. He knew exactly where the sub-counter panic latch sat. Under his fingertips, on speaker, Maya said, "That's an officer who retired in 2019, and if you're in Mr. Carter's kitchen, you're about to be in handcuffs." The woman moved. Not for a gun, too smart with NYPD already en route. She went for speed instead, lunging to slip past Daniel toward the pantry, toward the babies she'd marked with her eyes. Daniel didn't think so much as let his body answer. He pivoted, one arm barring her path, the other snagging the lapel of her jacket just long enough to throw off her momentum. She stumbled. A phone clattered out, skittered under a bar stool. The kitchen door thudded. The third man had found it locked and hit it with a shoulder. Metal met metal. Daniel's house could take a beating. His guests' nerves less so. 30 seconds, Gabe said into his ear. NYPD 2 minutes. Stay vertical. The false caseworker recovered and glared up at him. No smile now. The veneer peeled back and something mean looked out. "You think money can build walls that high?" She hissed. "I know it can," Daniel said softly. "And I know people who pretend to work for children while hunting them don't last long when the walls come down." The door thudded again. The man in the kitchen flinched, patience finally cracking. His hand went under his jacket and came out with a length of dark plastic that wasn't a gun but might as well have been a flex cuff. He lunged, reaching to bind Daniel's wrists. It was clumsy. Daniel wasn't a fighter, not formally, but he'd spent a childhood getting out of grips. He dropped his center of gravity, twisted, and the man's wrist thunked off the edge of the island. The flex cuff fell. Daniel kicked it away. It skidded and disappeared under the sub-zero. Then the elevator dinged again, brighter, confident. The door slid back and 2 of Gabe's men poured out in slate suits that moved like armor. The first had his hands up in the universal, "We're not police, but we're not your friends" posture. The second already had his palm on the kitchen door brace. It slid back on a control frequency only their fobs spoke. "Sir," the lead said, voice calm, "step aside." The man with the fake badge froze, eyes darting and, incredibly, tried to run back into the hall. He met the chest of the second security officer and sat down hard. The woman reached for the phone under the bar stool, fingers grazing it. Daniel stepped on it gently, pinning it. He picked it up with 2 fingers and handed it to the lead guard. "Chain of custody," he said. The guard slid it into a Faraday pouch. So, of course, the third man in the service stair decided he was done. The inner door rattled, then nothing. He was retreating. The first siren drifted up from somewhere far below, a city noise that somehow, in this moment, meant relief. NYPD arrived under 2 minutes. 2 uniforms and a detective in rolled sleeves who clocked the badges in one sweep and didn't bother with theatrics. The false agents went face down, cuffed for real this time. The woman stayed quiet. The man started talking before the metal even clicked. Daniel watched the detective's pen move. He caught words: ice tip, high risk, cash, no kids when we planned. We were told to retrieve. The detective looked up. "Mr. Carter, we'll need a statement and whatever footage you have." "You'll have both," Daniel said, "and a names list for anyone who steps into my elevators this quarter." The uniforms walked the 2 out. The apartment exhaled. Gabe came in, broad, unhurried, eyes doing a silent circuit of the room. "You okay?" "Yes," Daniel said, and was surprised to find he meant it. He gestured toward the pantry. "Eleanor?" The flower shelf side open. Eleanor stood in the slip of shadow with the twins snug against her, cheeks tear-damp but chin still high. There was a small room behind her, a quiet pocket with a daybed, water, a first aid kit, a screen wired to the security feed. She'd kept the twins calm with a hum and the heel of her hand circling their backs, a rhythm older than any city. When she stepped out, she kept one hand on them and the other on the jam, steadying herself in a world that had just tilted. "They weren't CPS," she said. "Not a question, no," Daniel answered. "They were working for someone who wanted you separated from the babies." Gabe lifted the Faraday pouch. "We'll see who." The detective took Daniel's statement in the study, careful and quick. When he left, Gabe remained. He held out a printout he'd pulled from the phone before sealing it, a screenshot of a text thread between the woman and a number saved only as H. The last message, sent an hour earlier, read, "Pick-up window today, 1500, 1700. Asset must be secured before Thursday deposition. Use CPS cover if necessary. Avoid police. Do not engage if Carter on site." HA letter that meant nothing and everything. Hale, Victor Hale, COO, the man who told Daniel not to pick at scabs. Or it could be someone else. But Daniel's mind drew lines between peer accidents and forged badges faster than any analyst could type. "Deposition?" Daniel said. Gabe tapped the printout. "There's a civil suit scheduled Thursday. Worker safety, Pier 17, anonymous plaintiff. Could be a union action. Could be a family. Could be your housekeeper's mother found a lawyer with a spine." He looked at Elena, gentle for a man built like a barricade. "Did your mother talk to anyone?" Eleanor shook her head. "She doesn't trust the system. But Rosa's friend, Daniela, she said a man came by. Not a cop. He left a card." "I didn't see it." Daniel went very still. Rosa. The name landed harder now that danger had a face. "Find Daniela," he said to Gabe, politely. "Bring her here if she'll come. If she won't, meet her where she is." Gabe nodded once and was gone before the air could fill with gratitude. In the kitchen, Eleanor eased onto a stool, the twins dozing with that weird infant willingness to sleep after chaos, like their bodies knew to shut down. She stared at the marble as if it were a map. "They would have taken them," she said, voice small. "I knew something felt wrong." Daniel poured water into a glass and set it in front of her. "You kept your head. That probably saved their lives." She looked up. Her eyes searched his face, as if trying to place this version of him. The man who bought companies and the man who stood in the doorway with his chest squared to danger like he was the oldest kind of shield. "Why did they want them?" "I don't know yet," he said, and then honest, "I can guess." He told her about Pier 17, about the paper with Rosa's name, about Hale and the message. He didn't soften it. "She didn't need soft. My sister didn't die because she was careless," Elena said. "She worked double shifts to get out of a basement apartment with mold. She knew every safety rule like a prayer." "Then the record will show it," Daniel replied. "And if it doesn't, we'll write a new record." He took out his phone again and called another number he almost never dialed. "Liz," he said when the line clicked, "I need emergency guardianship paperwork drawn up for 2 minors. Temporary pending investigation. I'll arrange the surety bond, and I need a restraining order against unknown parties impersonating CPS. 2 hours, his general counsel said. I'll have a courier. Anything else? A private nurse for a 71-year-old in Queens by tonight. And a security detail outside her door. Done. He hung up and looked at Elena. We'll do this with the law. We're not hiding, we're holding. She squeezed her eyes shut once like a swimmer surfacing, then nodded. My mother will be afraid. She thinks a judge is a rich man with a gavel. Some are, Daniel said. Some aren't. I know a few of the latter. The elevator chimed again. Not danger? Lydia stepped out, face drained from worry and travel. Mr. Carter, I came as soon as I... She stopped when she saw the twins, then Eleanor, then the scuffed edge of the island where the fake caseworker's wrist had kissed stone. What happened? Someone used your credentials to cut a camera and clone a fob, Daniel said. We had visitors. It's contained, Lydia's hands trembled. I know, he interrupted gently. But I need to know who had access to your console. Only me and Victor's assistant sometimes when he schedules vendor deliveries. He said it would help coordination. The room seemed to tilt a degree. Victor's assistant, Daniel repeated evenly. Name, Harper Lane, H. the text had said. It could be coincidence. Daniel didn't believe in coincidence anymore. He believed in leverage applied by men who smiled in glass rooms. Gabe returned with a small woman in a jean jacket and nerves like wire. Daniela, he said by way of introduction. Rosa's friend. Daniela sat, hands balled in her lap, eyes shining when she looked at the twins. I promised Rosa I'd look out for them, she said. There was a man. He came to the hospital when they were discharged. Said he was with employee relations. He wanted papers, names of family. I told him to get lost. He left this. She dug in her bag and produced a card, no logo. Just a name and number. Harper Lane, Strategic Operations. Elena made a small sound like a word swallowed. Daniel turned the card over. On the back, in neat block letters, someone had written, Thursday. Don't show. He passed the card to Gabe. Photograph it. Then call Harper for a meeting he can't decline. Gabe's mouth twitched, his version of a grin. How firm do you want the invitation? Firm enough, Daniel said. The twins stirred. Luna's hand opened and closed in sleep, the reflex a grasp at something that wasn't there. Eleanor stroked her hair and whispered a prayer in Spanish that even Daniel, who had never learned the words, understood by shape and tone. Keep them safe, keep them seen. Daniel stood, feeling the day rearrange itself around a new gravity. He'd flown home for silence. He'd found a fight worth his lungs. He looked at Eleanor. We're going to take care of this, he said. Not because it's good press, not because my name is on a foundation, because Rosa deserved better, because he nodded at the twins, deserve a world that doesn't steal them. Elena held his gaze. I believe you, she said simply. I don't know why, but I do. His phone vibrated with a text from Maya Chen, the commissioner. Real CPS will visit tomorrow to document impersonation and coordinate protection plan for minors. I've assigned my best. Stay put tonight. Another message arrived an instant later from an unknown number. A photo taken from a long lens, the frame angled from a window across the street, clean as a hunter's eye. In the shot, Eleanor stood at Daniel's kitchen island with the twins. The timestamp said 30 minutes ago. Below it a message. You're out of your depth, Carter. Don't go near Pier 17. Gabe read it over his shoulder and swore once softly. Daniel looked at the skyline through the glass. The East River ran like a blade under the low sun. Out of his depth? He'd spent his childhood drowning and taught himself to breathe underwater. He typed back one word, then deleted it. He handed the phone to Gabe. Trace it. Burn whoever sent it. He turned to Eleanor. Tonight you stay here. The safe room will be your room. My people will bring your mother to a secure apartment and sit on her door. Tomorrow we start. We don't wait for Thursday. Eleanor nodded as if the ground had steadied under her feet and she could finally shift her weight without bracing for collapse. She kissed the twins' heads. We're safe, she murmured to them, a promise thrown like a rope into the next day. For now we're safe. From the hall the printer whirred to life. The guardianship forms, the first legal lines drawn in a war that had begun in a kitchen and would end in a courtroom, on a pier or somewhere darker, and somewhere in a different room of the city. A man with a letter for a name, H, looked at his phone, saw a message he hadn't expected from a billionaire he had underestimated, and made a call that would set the next twist into motion. Night fell over Manhattan like a curtain pulled too fast, smothering the last gold streaks of the sun in favor of neon and steel. Daniel's penthouse windows reflected a city that never slept, but inside the air was different, thick, fragile, braced for what might come. Eleanor sat on the edge of the safe room's daybed, the twins curled against her in their sling, both finally asleep after hours of fitful whimpers. She'd hummed the same Spanish lullaby until her throat felt raw, her body swaying like a tree in the wind. Even now, in the silence, her ears kept straining for phantom footsteps, for another knock at the elevator that didn't belong. Daniel stood a few feet away, jacket off, sleeves rolled, staring at a spread of documents on the desk. Amora Foundation reports, worker safety files, CPS impersonation notes. It looked less like a billionaire's study and more like a war map. He had a glass of water untouched by his hand, and his eyes burned with the same sharpness that once made Wall Street whisper his name like a threat. "Why are you still awake?" Elena asked quietly. Her voice cracked not from fear but exhaustion. "It's almost midnight." Daniel didn't look up. "Because if I sleep, someone else gets ahead, and right now that's a luxury I can't afford." "You're not their father," she reminded, though her tone lacked accusation. It was a question disguised as fact. That made him glance at her. "Neither are the people who tried to take them. But they wanted them badly enough to forge badges, clone fobs, and risk a felony in my kitchen. That makes them my problem." Elena lowered her gaze to the twins. Their tiny breaths warmed her chest. "They don't even know," she whispered. "They don't know their mother's gone, that people are fighting over them like property. All they know is heartbeat and milk. That's all babies should know." Daniel's jaw tightened. For a second, he saw a flash of himself at 3 years old, standing in a foster kitchen, waiting for someone to notice his scraped knees, his empty stomach. No one had. He'd grown armor instead of trust. And now, in front of him, was the living proof of what happened when armor wasn't enough. 2 children who'd lost everything before they could even speak. His phone buzzed. A message from Gabe. "Harper Lane confirmed at Pier 17 offices tonight." Moving quietly. "No security detail on him. Recommend we strike before he knows you're involved." Daniel typed back, "I'm coming. Prep transport." Elena's head snapped up. "You're leaving? Tonight?" "Yes. Are you insane?" she hissed, careful not to wake the twins. Those men, they weren't alone. Whoever sent them will be watching. "You think walking into Pier 17 at night is just business?" Daniel's eyes didn't waver. "It's not business. It's truth. Hale thinks Pier 17 is closed, buttoned up. I want to see what was buried with your sister's name on it." Elena stood, still rocking the babies. "And what if they're waiting for you? What if tonight was a test, to see how far you'd go? You could walk into a trap." "I've walked into worse," Daniel said flatly. "And I walked out." "Money won't stop bullets," she shot back. His lips twitched, almost a smile, but darker. "No, but planning does." Before she could argue, Gabe himself appeared in the doorway, broad shoulders nearly filling the frame. "Car's ready. Black SUV, no trackers. We've got a 2-man shadow team sweeping Pier 17 already. Looks quiet, but quiet usually means teeth." Daniel nodded. "Good." Elena stepped between them. "Take me." Both men froze. Daniel's brows lifted. "You're not serious. You want answers about Rosa," she said, voice rising despite her exhaustion. "You think you'll recognize what happened? You won't. You'll see numbers, documents, contracts. I'll see her. Her locker, her shift notes, the places she complained about. The shortcuts she said they made workers take. If you want truth, you need me there." "No," Daniel said instantly. "Yes," she pressed. "They already know about me, about the babies. They'll come again whether I sit here or not. At least if I go, I'm useful." Daniel looked at Gabe, expecting him to back him up. But Gabe only shrugged, a soldier's shrug. "She's not wrong. If Rosa was the key, the sister's eyes might spot what we miss. We can keep her in the vehicle until it's clear." Daniel exhaled, slow, like he was bleeding frustration. He wanted to say no. He wanted to lock her in the safe room and throw away the code. But Elena's stare didn't waver, and in that moment she looked less like a maid and more like someone carved from steel herself. "Fine," he said at last. But you follow my lead. If I say move, you move. If I say run, you run. And if you say fight, she asked. Then you pray, he replied. Minutes later, the SUV slid out of the building's underground garage, headlights low, windows black. Eleanor sat in the back with the twins, strapped into makeshift carriers Gabe had brought from storage. The city streamed past. Glittering towers, empty piers, shadows between streetlights. Pier 17 loomed ahead like a carcass. The warehouse sat abandoned, scaffolding half dismantled, warning signs plastered crooked across chain-link fences. Daniel remembered the settlement reports. Accident, fall hazard, employee error. Clean, contained, paid off. But the site in front of him was anything but clean. Gabe parked 2 blocks away. We hoof the rest. Elena wrapped a blanket tighter around the twins. They stay in the car, she said firmly. I'm not taking them into that place. Daniel met her eyes. Agreed. He handed Gabe a second key fob. Lock down the SUV. Anyone tries to breach, it seals. They moved on foot, boots crunching against gravel, the river wind sharp and smelling of rust. Daniel's eyes scanned every shadow, every creak of the pier's bones. Gabe held a flashlight low, its beam cutting a thin silver path. Helena followed, silent but steady, her arms folded tight against her ribs as if still holding the children. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and mildew. Old forklifts sat abandoned, like skeletons of an industry left to rot. A desk with rotting ledgers leaned against a wall. And there, in the center, under a broken skylight, stood Harper Lane, slim, pale, sharp-eyed, a man who looked more like a financial analyst than a conspirator. But his posture gave him away, too calm, too rehearsed, like he'd been waiting. I shouldn't have come, Carter, Harper said, voice smooth. You were supposed to look the other way, like always. Daniel's expression was ice. And you were supposed to cover your tracks better, Harper smirked. You think Rosa Martinez was a martyr? She was an accident, a worker who didn't listen. That's all. Elena surged forward, but Gabe's arm barred her chest. Her eyes blazed. She was my sister, she hissed. Say her name like that again and see what happens. Harper ignored her. He looked only at Daniel. You've built empires by letting men like me clean your floors for you. You signed checks. You didn't ask where the blood went. Don't start now. Daniel stepped closer, shadows stretching across his face. You're right, he said coldly. I didn't ask. That's my failure. But tonight I'm asking. Harper's smile widened, thin as paper. And what if the answer burns everything you built? Before Daniel could reply, the sound cracked through the warehouse, metal clanging against metal, footsteps in sync. From the far end of the pier, figures emerged, 5, 6, maybe more, all in dark jackets, moving like wolves called to meet. Elena's breath caught. You said it was clear, she whispered to Gabe. Gabe's jaw tightened. It was? He flicked his radio. No response, static. Harper's smirk turned into a grin. You thought tonight was about truth? No, it's about leverage. Rosa's death was messy, but these kids, those twins, they're valuable. To the right people, they're worth more than your whole portfolio. Daniel froze. Valuable. Not just children, assets. He thought of the forged CPS badges, the word retrieve in the fake agent's messages, the way the woman's eyes had fixed on the babies, not Eleanor. What are they to you? He demanded. Harper shrugged. That's the beauty. Even you don't know yet. The circle of men closed tighter, boots echoing like a drumbeat. Daniel's fists curled. Elena's pulse hammered. And in the distance, faint but real, a baby's cry pierced the night. From the SUV they'd left 2 blocks away. Elena's heart stopped. The twins, she gasped. Harper's smile gleamed in the half-light. Checkmate. The cry sliced through the warehouse, the thin, high wail of a baby that made Elena's bones move before her brain. She lunged toward the open bay door. Gabe caught her wrist mid-stride. Stop, that's not coming from the street, he said, all calculation. It's bouncing. Harper's grin widened in the half-light. Amazing what you can do with a parabolic mic and a Bluetooth speaker. Daniel's eyes flicked to the rafters. Sound shimmered off corrugated steel, a cruel ventriloquism that turned panic into direction. He tasted the salt of the river and of someone else's design. Radio, he said. Gabe pressed his earpiece, jaw tight. Shadow 2 status on the SUV, a beat. Then a voice, dusty with adrenaline. 2 hostile contacts at the vehicle, neither got inside. Vault held. We repelled, one ran. One hiding under a sedan. Kids are fine. Repeat, kids are fine. Elena's knees shook with relief, the kind that made anger burn hotter. She looked at Harper and saw the smugness of a man who treated fear like a tool. You used their cries, she said, voice low and dangerous. To pull me out. To pull him out, Harper corrected, chin tipping at Daniel. You, Ms. Martinez, are leverage. He is the prize. More figures poured from the dark, a half-circle of men in cheap jackets and expensive shoes, their steps in rhythm, their eyes erased. They carried no visible guns, but their hands curled like they knew the weight of them. Back, Gabe murmured without turning, positioning himself between Daniel and the curve of wolves. He slid his flashlight into his pocket and produced something smaller, smoother, a compact cylinder with a pull ring. Close your eyes on my mark. Harper saw it and laughed softly. Flash is cute, but I wonder, how well do you know your own house, Carter? How well do you know your own programs? Daniel kept his face still. Well enough. Oh? Harper's voice softened, a snake uncoiling. Then you know about the memorandum you signed 3 years ago. Emergency relocation for vulnerable minors. Amora Foundation ex-municipal agencies. A noble title. A lovely paragraph about rapid placement when time is critical. That memo lets my team move newborns from point A to point wherever a donor writes a big enough check. Faster than a judge can finish his tea time. Your signature made it legal enough no one blinked. Elena went white. Daniel didn't move, but something in him did. A file flashed in memory. A PDF he'd skimmed on a plane at 3 a.m., trusting legal to thread the needle between compassion and expediency. He had signed, then flown to a negotiation that made him another billion and a little more blind. They were never for donors, Harper went on almost tenderly. They were for men with problems. Men with lawsuits. Men who needed certain children to be nowhere, to be no one. Your Rosa was messy. Her death messier. But babies. Babies are assets. Remove them and you remove testimony. Remove lineage. Remove standing. No plaintiff. No payout. Gabe's fingers tightened around the cylinder. Mark. Light detonated, white silent, a supernova that turned shadows to paper. The circle of men flinched. Elena threw her arm up. Daniel closed his eyes and counted 1, 2, 3 while Gabe moved, a practiced blur, driving his shoulder into the closest body and shoving him into another, like stacked crates. In the flurry, Daniel grabbed Elena's elbow and ran. They dove behind a forklift, the world ringing. Boots scrambled. Someone cursed in a language that wasn't English. Harper's laugh, still smooth, carried. Run if you like. We already have what we need. What does he mean? Elena gasped. He means he thinks I'll bend now, Daniel said and tugged her toward a service corridor. He doesn't know me. The corridor smelled of oil and old coffee. A flickering security light buzzed above a steel door marked electrical. Daniel shoved it. It held. Gabe appeared a heartbeat later, face set, 3 men groaning in his wake. 5 more outside the bay, he said. 2 inside, blind and angry. Daniel pointed to the door. Electrical. Can you... Gabe stepped back and drove his heel into the latch. Metal screamed. The door gave. They slipped inside. Rows of breakers lined the wall. Ancient labels peeling. Floor pumps, overheads, catwalk. Suppression. Daniel's finger shot to a red-capped lever labeled Foam Fire Sup. Hold to activate. Harper's men see in the dark as well as we do, Gabe warned. Harper's men breathe, Daniel said. Yanking the cap. And foam chokes, he pressed and held. Somewhere above valves clanged. A moment later, the warehouse exhaled a white blizzard. High-expansion foam pouring from ceiling heads, blooming over concrete, swallowing ankles and then shins, turning the men's shouts into muffled animal noise. Eleanor gagged at the chemical sweetness. Daniel pulled his sleeve over his nose and grabbed her hand. This way, he said, and they pushed through the side exit, the foam licking at their calves like a tide. They spilled onto a catwalk that ran above the river. The water below was black glass. The wind bit. Sirens ghosted far off, distant, then nearer, then swallowed again by the open air. The catwalk trembled as something heavy moved at the other end. Go, Gabe said, taking point. Truck is in the alley if we can make it to the stairs. Harper stepped from a doorway 20 yards ahead, as if the pier itself had carved him there. Foam dripped from his jacket. His hair was neat. His smile was neat. In his hand, not a gun, but a phone with its screen angled up. Don't hurry off, he called. I brought you something. A video started to play. Elena's mother, grey hair in a bun, sitting on a plastic chair in a cramped kitchen, hands folded. A newspaper lay on the table. The day's date was visible. A man off-screen said politely, "Ma'am, we're with child." The video froze, as if buffering, as if Mercy could be throttled. Harper watched Daniel watching Elena. "You leave her out of this," Elena said, voice shaking. "I will if you will," Harper replied. "Stay quiet. Don't show at any hearings. Tell Mr. Carter he misread the room and the policy. This storm passes. You keep the babies. I keep the pier. The world keeps turning, or," Daniel asked. "Or the world gets an education on corporate negligence, but not the way you want," Harper said. A viral clip of your housekeeper's mother screaming while CPS takes her grandchildren. A lawsuit that turns you into the villain. And for flavor, a few doctored documents with your signature next to words like expedite and relocate. You'll spend a year telling people what you didn't mean. A shape moved in the corner of Daniel's eye. On the river, a low skiff nosed under the pier, engine a whisper. A second team. An exit. Gabe saw it too. He shifted his weight, the calculation in his eyes clicking 4 steps ahead. "We can take him," he murmured. "No," Daniel said softly. "We can beat him." He raised his voice. "You're right about one thing, Harper. I signed something I didn't pass." "That ends tonight." "Oh?" Harper arched a brow. "You'll unsign a program. I'll expose it," Daniel said. "From my account. With my face. And if you publish your doctored version, I'll publish the raw. You want a war of receipts? I have more paper than you." He took a step forward. "And if you touch Elena's mother, I won't call the police first. I'll call the commissioner. Then I'll call every reporter I fund. Then I'll call your mother and tell her what you do for a living." For the first time, something passed over Harper's face, an involuntary tick, a flick along the jaw, the kind of crack a man gets when hit in a place he forgot could feel. "You think you can buy a conscience in a night?" He sneered. "No," Daniel said. "I can use the one I already have." Harper's mouth tightened. He flicked his eyes to the end of the catwalk. 2 of his men should have appeared there by now, boxing them in. They didn't. Instead, a new sound rose, a low thrum from under the pier as the skiff bumped a piling, and then the wet slap of boots on metal as 2 harbor cops climbed a ladder with the bored competence of men who had seen and ended worse. Harper's phone buzzed. He glanced down. For a fraction of a second he wasn't acting. He was reading. The corner of his mouth sank. Whatever he saw pulled a pin inside him. "What did you do?" he asked, voice flat. Daniel didn't smile. "Maya Chen does not like it when people use her agency's name to steal children. She also doesn't like your skiff. It's unregistered. And the plate on the grey Honda by my SUV belongs to a dead man in Florida." Harper's eyes flicked to Gabe, who looked like he could have pulled all that from air. Then Harper laughed once, a short, ugly sound, and stepped back onto the door's threshold. "You can't stop what you started," he said, "because you didn't start it. Men above me did. Men who built the pier, the policy, the program. You're just their clean face, Carter. A velvet front on a machine." "Then I'll break the machine," Daniel said. Harper tipped 2 fingers to his brow like a lazy salute and vanished into the dark. The door clicked. A lock slid. The catwalk shuddered as a service door slammed somewhere below. Gabe swore quietly. "We had him." "No," Daniel said. "We have his tells. We have his tech. We have his policy. That's better." Harbor cops reached them, breath clouding. "We got a call about impersonators in a skiff," one said. "You people love drama." "You have no idea," Daniel said and showed his ID, and for once didn't feel like hiding behind a name. They made it back through the alley to the truck. The SUV hummed a comforting electric idle. Inside, Shadow 2 sat in the driver's seat, bleeding from a nick on his ear and grinning like a fool who'd kept 2 universes from collapsing. Luna slept. Matteo snuffled. Elena reached in and touched each forehead like a ceremony. When she looked up, the wildness had drained from her eyes, replaced by something iron. "Rosa left marks," she said. Daniel frowned. "What?" "In the warehouse," Elena said. "On the blue support column near the west stairs. She used to mark spots that scared her with chalk when she worked. She thought if she marked danger, she could make men notice. A little X, a word. Peligro. I saw it, faded, but there." Daniel felt something cold and old settle in his chest. "Show me. Tomorrow," Gabe cut in. "You're done tonight. Both of you, he wasn't wrong. The night had eaten its share. The twins needed a roof, and a room and a human voice that wasn't a threat. Eleanor nodded. Daniel nodded. They didn't argue with the right thing. On the ride back, Daniel's phone vibrated with a message from Liz. His general counsel. Guardianship packet ready. Judge Rosen can sign ex parte at 7 a.m. Have you at courthouse with CPS commissioner by 6:45. Also, see attachments. He opened the attachment. A scanned memo. His signature at the bottom, the title Harper had quoted, the body text dry as toast. But Liz had added a second page he'd never seen. A revision made 6 months ago, countersigned by Victor Hale. An addendum broadened emergency relocation to include situations of reputational harm to Carter Logistics and its affiliates. Jesus, Daniel breathed. Elena leaned forward. What? They expanded it, he said. They turned a disaster protocol into a PR weapon. They did it without asking me. Or they asked me to initial a stack and buried it where I wouldn't look. Gabe muttered. H is for Hale. Daniel sat back, the skyline cutting his silhouette. Tomorrow, he said, not a thought but a plan. We go to Pier 17 in daylight with city inspectors and cameras. We bring Liz, we bring Maya. We bring the union and anyone who ever lifted a box there. We photograph every chalk X Rosa ever drew. We pull every breaker panel and export every log. And we subpoena Harper Lane and Victor Hale. And my mother, Elena asked, voice small again around the edges. She'll sleep in a safe apartment tonight, Daniel said, with a nurse and a man named Marco outside the door, who once pulled me out of a riot with one arm. Tomorrow she meets you at the courthouse to sign guardianship papers as family. No one takes Luna and Mateo anywhere. Elena's eyes filled and didn't spill. Thank you. The SUV eased into Daniel's garage. The elevator took them up. Lydia stood waiting, face washed and set, a tray with tea and a first aid kit because that's what order looks like when the world is not. Daniela had fallen asleep on the couch with a blanket over her knees. She woke when she heard Elena's step and smiled, a little broken, a little whole. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at a city that looked back without blinking. He pulled out his phone and recorded a video, the kind he had never posted, the kind his PR had always told him would make him look too human. My name is Daniel Carter, he said into the lens. Tonight, individuals impersonated Child Protective Services and attempted to take 2 children from my home. They were not CPS. They were working for someone trying to silence a family connected to a death at one of my facilities. I have learned about a policy I signed that was revised without my knowledge and used to hurt the people it was supposed to help. That ends now. Tomorrow morning I will meet with the Commissioner of CPS, city inspectors, and council to begin formal proceedings. I will make public every document I have and every mistake I made. If anyone has information about Pier 17 or the death of Rosa Martinez, contact the number in the caption. We will protect you. He hit send to Liz with the note, post 8 a.m. from my account. He pocketed the phone and turned. Eleanor stood in the doorway to the safe room, the twins a warm weight against her. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Daniel said simply, I'm sorry. For what? Elena asked. For not seeing sooner, he said. She nodded once. Seeing is a start. In the silence that followed, the printer in the study woke and began to spit paper, summonses, subpoenas, a guardian's oath, thin white flags that weren't surrender but the opposite. On Daniel's phone, one more message slid in, unmarked number, no punctuation. Thursday moved up, tomorrow 10th. Pier 17, come alone if you want the truth. Gabe read it and shook his head. They want you isolated. Daniel looked at Elena and then at the twins. Small faces turned to sleep. They're going to get me surrounded, he said. By the right people. He picked up his jacket. He did not sleep. The city didn't either. Somewhere on the river, a skiff cut a line through black water, and a man with neat hair dialed a phone that rang in a higher office than Daniel had yet looked up to. And in chalk on a blue steel column at Pier 17, the word Rosa had written peligro, waited for morning to make it proof. At 6:42 a.m., the courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. A bailiff with a coffee stain on his sleeve slid open the wood door to Judge Rosen's chambers, and Daniel, Eleanor, and Commissioner Maya Chen stepped into a room that felt too small for how much could change inside it. Rosen didn't bother with ceremony. He skimmed Liz Park's packet, the emergency guardianship petition, the CPS safety plan, the sworn statement about last night's CPS impersonators, and lifted a steel date stamp like a gavel. Temporary guardianship to Elena Martinez, with Daniel Carter as financial surety and emergency care sponsor. CPS to coordinate a protection plan for the minors and the maternal grandmother. Sign here. The stamp thudded, ink bled. A new fact existed in the world. No one was taking Luna and Mateo without a fight that had the state's seal on it. In the hall, Maya handed Elena a thin folder. "This is what the system looks like when it's on your side," she said softly. "My officer will walk you through every step." Elena nodded, eyes full, mouth steady. At 8 a.m. sharp, Daniel's video went live from his official account. No edit, no polish. Just a man in a grey sweater saying the part rich men never say. "I signed something I didn't read closely enough. It hurt people. That ends now. The internet did what it does. Within 12 minutes, a union rep DM'd Liz. Within 20, a former Pier 17 forklift operator emailed a tip. By 8:37, Daniel's board chair was calling from a blocked number. He let it ring into the ocean of missed calls. Victor Hale texted once, "Don't put our house on fire to warm a stranger." Daniel didn't respond. He had a list, and call Victor back lived somewhere below. Make sure Elena's mother eats breakfast. By 9:18, Elena's mother, Teresa, sat on a quilted chair in a sunlit, secure apartment in Astoria, a home health nurse fussing gently over her blood pressure, while a broad-shouldered security man named Marco stood in the hall with his arms crossed and his eyes soft. Teresa held the guardianship order like a prayer card. "Dios te bendiga," she whispered to Daniel when he stuck his head in. "God bless you." He nodded, awkward with blessings, more fluent in logistics, and headed back out. At 9:58, 3 black SUVs rolled up to Pier 17's chain-link gate. The morning sharpened everything. The splintered pallets, the rusted winch, the way the warehouse's blue steel ribs cut the sky. Waiting at the gate, Liz Park with a stack of subpoenas. A buildings department inspector named Paula G. with a jaw like granite. FDNY Fire Marshal Rena Salazar. Neat bun, burnt coffee voice. And Luis Ortega, a union steward, whose hoodie said Teamsters and whose eyes said he had buried friends. Harper Lane stood just inside the fence in a crisp navy jacket and a smile that assumed the future would bend to it. Beside him, a rent-a-cop who looked like he'd never run a mile tapped a clipboard. "Private property," the guard announced without looking up. "No entry." Paula G. held up a folded paper. "Administrative warrant. You'll move the fence or we'll move it." Harper's smile twitched. "We're happy to cooperate. We just need to schedule a time with—" "Now is the time," Fire Marshal Salazar cut in, showing her badge. "Your foam system discharged last night outside of test parameters. That's a safety incident. You don't schedule safety." The guard worked the chain. The gate scraped open. The group moved like a small economy. Law, labor, enforcement. Money, each part spinning the other forward. Inside, the air tasted like old sugar and river iron. Elena paused just past the threshold, eyes scanning instinct over memory. "She used to cut across there," she said, pointing to a painted line on concrete. The blue columns, she didn't like them. They creaked. "Show me," Paula said. They reached the west stair. Halfway up, a blue H column shouldered a mezzanine. Near its base, chalk had ghosted into the paint. A faint X, nearly washed away by 1,000 boots and one bad night. Beneath the X, a word in shaky block letters, Peligro Luis Ortega went down on a knee. He touched the chalk like an altar, then looked up at Daniel. "Your Rosa wasn't the only one marking danger," he said. "But she was the only one who thought chalk would change a quarterly report." Paula ran a gloved finger along a seam and frowned. "This plate's been off recently." She tapped a bolt head that spun too easily. "Who touched my column?" Fire Marshal Salazar swung her flashlight up under the mezz. "Paula, look at this. Heat marks on a bracket that shouldn't have seen heat." She turned to Harper. "You do some welding up here without permits?" Harper's shrug was calibrated. "I don't run operations. I do strategy." "Your strategy leaves scorch marks," Salazar said dryly. Liz stepped aside, took a call, came back with her face set. "We got forklift telemetry from a guy who still had a login," she said, waving a printed screenshot. "Rosa's badge was used to activate a lift at 21:03 the night she died. But Rosa clocked out at 20:47, and her phone pings show she was already near the West Stair then. Someone used her badge after she left, Daniel said. Not a question. Or someone made her leave and kept her badge, Luis said. His voice sounded like concrete. Union filed grievances for months. Broken e-stops, chained exits, shift foremen pushing quotas over safety. We were told production had new efficiencies. He angled his chin at Harper. That what you call them in strategy? Harper didn't bite. Where's your evidence besides chalk? Here, Elena said. She was staring at a spot on the mez railing, a cheap key lock half hidden by duct tape. Rosa used to hide her locker key when she was assigned upstairs. She reached under the railing, fingers feeling for a story only a sister would know, and came up with a taped key and a message in Spanish, faded by dust. If I don't come back... Elena, look under the saints. They found the locker bank downstairs. Rosa's door, 312, opened on 2 folded uniforms, a nicotine yellow St. Jude card pinned to the back wall, and behind the card, a round baby formula lid pressed flat against the metal with magnets. Behind the lid, a micro SD card in a little plastic coffin, and a note in a neat, careful hand. Elena, only you. Elena's breath left her like a prayer answered too late. She passed the card to Liz with both hands, like she was handing over the moon. Liz slotted it into a reader. A video window bloomed on her tablet. Rosa's face in selfie close-up, the camera held too near, the fluorescent wash turning her pallor grey. Behind her, the blue ribs of the warehouse. Her voice low-rushed in Spanish first, then English like she'd practiced for someone who wouldn't speak her language. If anything happens, it's not an accident, Rosa said, eyes shining without tears. They chained the south exit last week. Mr. Lane says if we stop the belt for safety, we lose ours. The e-stop doesn't kill the motor anymore, not all the way. They bridged something. Listen. She turned the camera. The frame found a control box with a missing lock, a loop of wire jumping 2 terminals, where a safety contact should have lived. We asked for repair. They said later. We got hurry. If I don't come back, Elena, keep the babies far. Silence reached up and pulled at everyone's throat. Luis cursed like a benediction. Paula exhaled so hard her shoulders dropped half an inch. Fire Marshal Salazar's jaw flexed. Daniel felt the exact size of the thing he'd allowed to be built with his name on the paperwork and someone else's hands on the bolts. Harper moved first. Chain of custody, he said, too quickly. That card could be fabricated. Paula turned, slow as a safe door. Say that again while I call a DA to swear out a warrant for your phone. Harper's smile returned, thin, professional, terrified if you knew what to look for. I'm just preserving evidentiary integrity. From the far end of the floor, a voice called, Marshal, you need to see this. A firefighter waved them to a maintenance closet. Inside, clean shelves, labeled bins, and a section of wall where dust stopped in a perfect rectangle. Salazar pulled a shelf away. Behind it, a recessed panel with a numeric keypad and a little printed label. Demo arm. Who the hell keeps a demolition panel behind WD-40? She muttered. She popped the cover. The small LCD pulsed with a message that should have lived in a contractor's trailer, not in a closet. Pre-armed. T-00749, Paula's hand shot for her radio. Everybody out. Now. This isn't a code-compliant anything. Harper's face gave something away again, only a fraction. Enough to say he hadn't expected the timing, and hated that he hadn't. That's a scheduled abatement, he lied poorly. Pre-registered. Funny, Salazar said. My office never clears surprise demolition bombs. Move. The warehouse shifted from inquiry to evacuation in a breath. FDNY barked corridors clear. Luis hustled 2 laborers out, who had wandered in to see what the fuss was. Daniel grabbed Elena's elbow. We have to go. The chalk, she said, eyes jumping to the blue column. Rosa marked more. She wanted someone to see. You've been seen, he said. We need you alive to testify. The floor vibrated with a distant thud as a pre-charge somewhere deep cycled. The LCD ticked to 00.631. Salazar's voice cracked like a whip. Out. They moved. At the locker bank, Elena skidded, reached in and snagged the St. Jude card with Rosa's handwriting. For the babies, she whispered, and stuffed it into her pocket. At the bay, a knot of uniforms and hard hats funneled bodies into daylight. Daniel felt the sun slash across his face like a verdict. Behind him, Liz's tablet chattered as it backed up Rosa's video to 3 cloud locations and 1 external drive strapped to Gabe's chest like a second heart. A black sedan rolled to the curb with the impatience of power. Victor Hale stepped out. Crisp suit, expensive tan, eyes like polished stone. He took in the scene, the blinking trucks, the scurrying firefighters, the open gate, and smiled like a man arriving at a party to deliver a toast and a coup. "Daniel," he called, full voice, no shame. "What are we doing, playing union games? This is reckless. This is exposure." Daniel's chest went still. He had rehearsed a dozen ways to fire this man. None of them involved a countdown clock. "Exposure is the point," he said. "You signed an addendum that turned a charity into a cover. You put my name on a pipeline that disappeared children to save quarters." Victor's smile didn't move. "You're hysterical. I countersigned a revision council drafted to streamline emergency placements. We did what leaders do. We solved a problem. You moved newborns like file folders," Liz said, stepping in, eyes sparking. "And you paid Harper Lane's shell company out of a slush fund labeled Strategic Operations. We have the paper, Victor. And we have Rosa's video." For a heartbeat, Victor's face emptied. Then a new smile, meaner. "Chain of custody." "Try it," Paula said without looking up from her radio. "After you clear my demo hazard." Victor turned to Harper. "So told me we had until Thursday." Harper's jaw flexed. Things accelerated. "Because you sent actors into my kitchen," Daniel said, quiet as knives. Sirens climbed. The LCD ticked to 0003.12. Fire Marshal Salazar cupped her hands and bellowed, "Clear the block, move the crowd back, NYPD, perimeter, now!" Victor grabbed Daniel's elbow, low and intimate, the way men do when they don't want to be seen begging. "Listen to me," he hissed. "You can still make this about a rogue operator. You give Harper to the wolves and say you were misled. You keep the foundation. You keep the board. You keep your seat." Daniel looked down at the hand on his sleeve, then up at the man he had once trusted to land planes while he lit new ones on fire. "I keep the babies," he said. "Everything else can burn." He shook Victor off. A hard hat sprinted out of the bay. "Marshal," he yelled, "the panel says it's a staged drop, columns pre-cut. You're not looking at a bomb. You're looking at a building that's about to sit down." Salazar swore. "Controlled collapse with no control, of course." She pointed at the back of the warehouse. "They've cut the big blues. When the timed charges kick, the H's fold and the roof rides them down. We can't stop it. We can only keep it from smashing the street." She grabbed Daniel's arm. "Everyone out of the footprint. Now!" Eleanor turned in a small circle, eyes combing the interior one last time. She saw the chalk X's, 1, 2, 3, like the faintest constellation. She saw Rosa's careful letters trying to make danger visible. She saw the curve of the mez where a cheap lock had hidden a key. Then she saw, near the west stair, a flash of metal taped under the bottom step. Not official, not permitted. Human. A thumb drive, black electrical tape giving up in the heat. "Wait," she breathed. And before anyone could stop her, she darted back under the bay door and slid to her knees by the stair. Tape ripped. The drive came away in her fist. Someone shouted her name. Gabe swore in a way that involved saints and sports. Daniel lunged after her, caught her forearm, and together they ran, knees banging, lungs burning. The LCD inside the closet that no one should have built hit EO001A0. An unseen cutter somewhere in the belly of the pier popped bolts in a zipper of bangs. The warehouse sighed. Not like a person, like a machine thinking about laying down. They burst into daylight as the first blue column kinked at its waist with a sound like a whale breaking its back. People screamed. FDNY elbows rose like shields. The roof shifted, shrugged, and began to settle toward the marked floor. Elena shoved the drive into Liz's palm. "Rosa hid this," she panted. "She hid it under the stair." Liz slipped it into the reader with hands that could suture in motion. A directory blinked up. Martinez voice memos and radio capture. She opened the second. Files bloomed, tiny wavs with timestamps. Liz hit play. A man's voice crackled out, tinny and intimate, recorded off a handheld Foreman radio. Don't stop the belt, we need the shipment out. I don't care if the light's blinking, bridge it and push. Yes, I'll clear it later with H. Another. H says we're on the hook if the inspectors come, so keep that south door chained. This is on Lane, not me. A third, choked in static, the same voice, different hour. We lost one. Don't put it on channel, we'll write it as Tox. Get her badge, move. The street went quiet even as it roared. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood it. New York has a way of knowing when a man is guilty, even before a judge has the pleasure. Victor's composure cracked like sugar glass in August. He turned to Harper, whispering something with sharp edges. Harper didn't look at him. He was watching Daniel, cataloguing the shape of a man who had decided not to bend and had found something in himself he had not expected to. Exist NYPD floodlight snapped on as the building slumped into itself with a groan that shook teeth. Dust gusted out in a white wall. Firefighters took a half step forward and then held, professional patience winning over adrenaline. The timed collapse did what it was built to do. Fold inward, not outward. It ate the chalk marks, the foam residue, the floor line Rosa had crossed 1,000 times. It tried to eat the truth and missed by a handful of plastic and a sister who could still read the language of her dead. 10 minutes later, while dust still hung and sirens still dopplered, Detective Alvarez from last night's kitchen arrest slid between uniforms like a man born for parades of bad news. He showed his shield and nodded at Liz's tablet. We'll need copies. You'll have originals, Liz said. We'll keep the copies. He cracked a smile. Counsel who learned the hard way. Counsel who learned, she said. Alvarez turned to Harper. Mr. Lane, I need you to come with me. Harper lifted his chin. On what charge? Impersonating law enforcement for starters, Alvarez said. After that, we'll let the DA get creative. 2 uniforms took Harper's arms, polite hands turning to iron the second his wrists had the wrong ideas. Victor stepped in. Officer, this is outrageous. And you'll get your turn, Alvarez said without heat, eyes flicking to Victor's immaculate cufflinks. Don't wander. Harper looked at Daniel as they walked him past. For the first time, the smile was gone and not coming back. You don't know how high this goes, he said. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning he hoped would hurt. Daniel didn't answer. He looked at Elena instead. She was dusty, hair escaping its bun, cheeks streaked with tears and grit, the St. Jude card peeking from her pocket like a flag. The twins were safe across the river. Teresa was safe in Astoria. Rosa was dead but not voiceless. The building was down but not the case. Fire Marshal Salazar came back from a talk with her crew and planted her hands on her hips. We'll be sifting that pile for weeks, she said. But from what we heard and what we saw before the sit-down, you don't need rubble to make your case. You need a courtroom, Liz nodded. We'll file an emergency motion to preserve every record that ever touched Pier 17, and we'll file an injunction to freeze Hale's accounts for fear of spoliation. Victor laughed, a brittle sound. You think a judge is going to freeze corporate accounts over a handful of chalk and a stolen radio? You think a jury won't convict over a dead mother and a radio that says, keep that south door chained? Louise shot back. Half this city has worked a job like that and knows exactly what your voice sounds. Like when you say Bridget and push, a thin man in a too-clean suit shouldered through the crowd and murmured in Victor's ear. Whatever he said scraped the skin off Victor's expression. Victor's eyes cut to Daniel, assessing, recalculating, a machine finding a new gear. He stepped forward with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no in a way that stuck. Daniel, he said, voice lowered, almost paternal. You're in shock. You're making promises you can't keep and enemies you can't see. Step back, let counsel work. We'll sacrifice Harper. We'll pay the family. We'll restructure the foundation and give your conscience a parade. But do not put your company on a pyre. You burn, we all burn. Daniel looked at the rubble of a place that had turned human bodies into throughput and lies into policy, and then back at the man who had advised him through 1,000 deals. Maybe some things deserve to burn, he said. Victor's mouth flattened. Careful, Daniel. Fire jumps. A phone buzzed. Not Daniel's. Alvarez's. The detective listened, eyebrows rising, then slid the phone back into his pocket. Mr. Hale, he said in a voice both bored and delighted, can I see your hands? Victor blinked. On what basis? Money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Provisional. Alvarez said. Your strategic operations paid a company in Delaware that paid a company in the Caymans that paid 3 guys with fake CPS badges last night. You can argue about intent on Center Street. The world tilted a degree, just enough to make Daniel feel the shape of something like justice start to form. It wouldn't be quick. It wouldn't be neat, but it would be real. Victor's eyes went cold. This city loves a rich traitor, he said to Daniel as he offered his wrists. They'll cheer you as they take the rest from you. Daniel didn't blink. They can have what should have never been mine. As NYPD walked Victor toward a squad car, Elena's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Your sister didn't fall. Meet me where she ate last, noon. Bring no cops. Bring Carter if you want him to hear it first. Daniela, who had been hovering like a guardian with a jean jacket, looked at the text and sucked in a breath through her teeth. Rosa used to eat at a truck on 12th and Water, Tito's. Noon is in 20 minutes. Gabe stepped closer, his shadow falling over the cracked screen. Trap written all over it. Or truth, Eleanor said, voice a thread pulled tight. She looked at Daniel. She didn't fall. Someone saw. Daniel glanced at the rubble, at the twins' aunt with dust in her hair and a drive in her pocket, at the clock on his phone. He had spent years letting other men pick his battles. In 20 minutes, someone who had watched his house burn from the inside wanted to choose his next one. We go, he said, but on our terms. Gabe nodded once, already barking quiet orders into his mic. Liz slid the drive into a new pouch and handed Elena a bottle of water with a lawyer's tenderness. Louise squeezed Elena's shoulder like family. As they moved to the SUVs, a news helicopter chopped the sky above the river. The rubble steamed in the new light. Out on Water Street, a taco truck's grill hissed and smoked as it heated for lunch. Ordinary life setting up its table next to catastrophe. From a window in a building across the way, a camera lens watched them leave. A finger hit send on a text to a contact labeled only V. He's coming. The reply came back instantly. Good. Bring him close enough to hear what he ruined. Then end it. No sirens this time, no foam. Just a corner of the city. A truck that sold tacos and secrets and the clock nudging noon. The taco truck on 12th and Water smelled of grilled onions and charred tortillas, the kind of ordinary scent that usually drowned out the city's chaos. But for Daniel and Elena, nothing smelled ordinary anymore. They approached the corner with Gabe walking 10 paces behind, 2 more of his men posted at opposite ends of the block, blending in with morning workers. Elena clutched her jacket closed against the breeze. Her eyes darted across faces, searching. She used to sit right there, she whispered, pointing to a green-painted bench bolted into the sidewalk. Every Friday after payday. Rosa loved Tito's carnitas. Daniel scanned the scene with the habit of a man who trusted no corner. The taco truck's awning flapped. A line of city workers waited with paper cups of coffee. Nothing screamed trap. And then a voice, low but clear, came from the far side of the bench. Elena, a woman in a denim cap, rose from the shadows. Middle-aged, with hair tied back and skin leathered by sun, she carried herself like someone who had worked too many shifts to be noticed. Her eyes, though, cut sharp as glass. Daniela said you'd come, Elena breathed. Who are you? The woman removed her cap. Maria. I worked with Rosa. The night she died, I was there. Daniel's gaze hardened. Then talk, quickly. Maria glanced at the crowd, then leaned in. Rosa didn't fall. She was pushed. She argued with Lane about the chained door. He told her to keep quiet. She refused. She said she'd go to the union. 10 minutes later, I saw him on the mez with her. She went over. Not a stumble, a shove. When we ran to her, Harper yelled for everyone to stay back. He said he'd handle it. Then Victor came, told us all it was over. Elena's breath caught. You saw him. I saw his hand on her shoulder before she went down. Maria's eyes flicked to Daniel, and I saw your signature on the safety sheet that let them chain that door. Don't tell me you didn't know. Daniel felt the words like a nail through his palm. He had known in the abstract, not in the blood. Now it was flesh. Before he could answer, Gabe's voice crackled through the bud in Daniel's ear. 2 men moving southwest corner. Not ours, Daniel straightened. Maria, why now? Why risk this? Her jaw tightened. Because Rosa kept talking about you, Carter. She said maybe he doesn't see. Maybe if he saw he'd stop them. I thought she was naive. But last night's video, you saw. and now Hale's in cuffs. That means maybe the tide turned. Elena grabbed Maria's hands. Will you testify? Maria nodded once. I'll tell a jury what I saw, but you need to keep me breathing until then. A sudden screech cut the air, tires on asphalt. A black van tore the corner, sliding too fast. Its side door rattled open. Inside, a figure leaned with something long in his hands. Not a gun, something heavier, crueler. Down. Gabe's voice thundered from behind. He tackled Elena sideways. Daniel pulled Maria to the pavement as the weapon discharged. Not bullets. Smoke canisters choking, acrid, flooding the street. People screamed and scattered, tacos and coffee hitting the ground. The van screeched closer, aiming for the bench. Gabe rolled up, sidearm drawn, fired twice at the driver's windshield. The van jerked, swerved, and slammed into a lamppost. Steam hissed. The side door burst wider. The man with the canisters stumbled out, mask on, reaching for another. Daniel was already moving. He surged forward, not with training but with fury, and slammed the door back into the man's face. The mask cracked. Gabe closed the gap, boot to chest, and the man sprawled unconscious against the curb. Two uniforms from a nearby precinct sprinted across the intersection, weapons raised. Sirens climbed from blocks away. The street turned to chaos under order's shadow. Maria coughed, clutching Elena's shoulder. That wasn't random, she rasped. That was a message. They're not finished. Daniel steadied her. No, but they're losing. Within minutes, the van was surrounded, the driver cuffed and hauled out, the canisters secured. Reporters already gathered, cameras snapping. NYPD detectives pressed for statements. Maria repeated her claim. Rosa was pushed, Harper was there, Victor covered. Every word recorded. Every word now public. By evening, the news cycle spun like a storm. Billionaire blows whistle on his own company. Housekeeper's sister died in cover-up. Talk shows raged. Hashtags multiplied, and outside Carter Tower, crowds gathered with candles and posters that read, Justice for Rosa. In the penthouse that night, silence finally lived where rage had once burned. Elena sat on the sofa with Luna asleep across her chest. Matteo curled at her side. Maria had been moved to protective custody. Teresa slept safely in Astoria, and Daniel stood by the window, the city a restless ocean of lights beneath him. You could have walked away, Elena said softly, not looking up. Most men like you would have. Daniel turned. His face looked older than it had a week ago, but not broken. Maybe before, he said. Before chalk marks and bracelets, and two kids who don't even know what was stolen from them. Now I can't, she studied him, eyes steady. Why, he exhaled. Because Rosa was right. I didn't see. And because you didn't give me a choice. You stood in my kitchen and told me survival means crossing lines. I've been crossing lines my whole life for money. Maybe it's time I crossed one for something better. Elena's lips trembled, then steadied into the ghost of a smile. She lowered her gaze to the babies. Then maybe they'll grow up knowing promises can keep more than just blood alive. Daniel walked closer. For a moment, awkward but unashamed, he touched the top of Matteo's tiny head. Warmth spread into his palm like a truth he hadn't held in decades. Somewhere outside, a helicopter buzzed, reporters chasing the next frame. Somewhere else, men with money muttered about damage control. Harper Lane sat in a holding cell, waiting to decide if betrayal would buy him mercy. Victor Hale prepared to fight with the only weapon left to him, lawyers with teeth. But here, in a room lined with glass, a billionaire, a maid, and two children sat in the same silence. Not the silence Daniel once demanded. A new one. Earned, fragile, alive, and in that silence he understood something Rosa had left behind in chalk and voice memos. Sometimes wealth isn't what you keep. It's what you refuse to let be taken. The night stretched deep, but for the first time in years, Daniel Carter didn't dread the morning. He welcomed it, because tomorrow meant more fighting. And now finally he was fighting the right war.